Gideon's story is one of the most compelling narratives in the Bible, found in Judges 6 through 8. It's a tale of an ordinary man called by God to deliver Israel from oppression, marked by doubt, divine reassurance, and eventual triumph through faith. Here's a detailed retelling of his story. Gideon's story begins during a dark time for the Israelites, roughly 1200 BCE, in the period of the Judges, leaders raised by God to deliver Israel from its enemies. After a season of peace, the Israelites again turned to idolatry, worshipping Baal and other Canaanite gods. As a consequence, God allowed the Midianites, along with the Amalekites and other eastern peoples, to oppress them for 7 years. Judges 6:1 through 6. The Midianites ravaged the land, destroying crops and livestock, forcing the Israelites to hide in caves and mountains. In their desperation, the Israelites cried out to God for help. God responded by sending a prophet to remind them of his past deliverance from Egypt and their disobedience. Judges 6:7 through 10. Then, he called Gideon. Gideon's call. Judges 6:11 to 24. Gideon was an unlikely hero. He was from the tribe of Manasseh, specifically the clan of Abiezer, which he described as the weakest in Manasseh, and he considered himself the least in his family. Judges 6:15. When we first meet him, he's threshing wheat in a winepress, not the usual open threshing floor, hiding from the Midianites to preserve what little he had. The angel of the Lord, often understood as a manifestation of God himself, appeared to Gideon, sitting under an oak tree, and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Judges 6:12. Gideon was skeptical. If God was with them, why were they suffering? Where were the miracles their ancestors spoke of? Judges 6:13. The Lord replied, "Go in the strength you have, and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" Judges 6:14. Gideon protested, citing his lowly status, but God promised, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive." Judges 6:16. Still unsure, Gideon asked for a sign. He prepared an offering, a young goat and unleavened bread, and placed it on a rock. The angel touched it with his staff, and fire consumed it, confirming God's presence. Terrified, Gideon realized he had seen God, but the Lord reassured him, "Peace. Do not be afraid. You are not going to die." Judges 6:23. Gideon built an altar there, calling it, "The Lord is Peace," destroying Baal's altar. Judges 6:25 to 32. That night, God gave Gideon his first task: tear down his father Joash's altar to Baal and the Asherah pole beside it. Build an altar to the Lord and offer a sacrifice using the wood from the pole. Gideon obeyed, but fearing the townspeople, he did it under cover of night with 10 servants. Judges 6:27. The next morning, the men of the town discovered the destruction and demanded Gideon's death. Joash defended his son, saying, "If Baal really is a god, he can defend himself." Judges 6:31. From then on, Gideon was nicknamed Jerub-Baal, meaning "let Baal contend with him." The fleece test. Judges 6:33 to 40. As the Midianites and their allies gathered in the valley of Jezreel, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon. He blew a trumpet, rallying the Abiezrites, and sent messengers to Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, who joined him. But Gideon still doubted. He asked God for 2 more signs using a wool fleece. First, he requested that the fleece be wet with dew while the ground remained dry. God did it. Then, he asked the reverse: dry fleece, wet ground. Again, God obliged. Judges 6:36 to 40. These tests confirmed God's promise, strengthening Gideon's faith. Reducing the army. Judges 7:1 to 8. Gideon amassed 32,000 men, but God said, "You have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel would boast against me." Judges 7:2. God instructed Gideon to send home anyone who was afraid. 22,000 left, leaving 10,000. Still too many. God told Gideon to take them to the water and separate those who lapped like dogs from those who knelt to drink. Only 300 lapped, and God chose them, saying, "With the 300 men that lapped I will save you." Judges 7:7. This ensured the victory would be undeniably God's. The battle against Midian, Judges 7:9-25. That night, God encouraged Gideon to attack, but offered another sign when Gideon hesitated. With his servant Purah, Gideon snuck into the Midianite camp and overheard a soldier recounting a dream. A barley loaf tumbled into the camp and destroyed a tent. His companion interpreted it as Gideon's victory, Judges 7:13-14. Emboldened, Gideon returned and devised a plan. He divided his 300 men into 3 groups, equipping each with a trumpet, an empty jar, and a torch hidden inside the jar. At his signal, they surrounded the camp, broke the jars to reveal the torches, blew their trumpets, and shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon!" Judges 7:20. The Midianites panicked, turned on each other, and fled. Gideon's men pursued, and reinforcements from Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh joined in. They captured and killed the Midianite leaders, Oreb and Zeb, delivering a crushing blow. Conflict with Ephraim and Succoth, Judges 8:1-17. The tribe of Ephraim complained they weren't called earlier to fight, but Gideon diplomatically praised their role in capturing Oreb and Zeb, pacifying them, Judges 8:1-3. As Gideon pursued the remaining Midianite kings, Zebah and Zalmunna, he asked the towns of Succoth and Penuel for bread for his exhausted men. Both refused, doubting his success. Gideon promised retribution, Judges 8:5-9. After capturing the kings, he returned, punished Succoth's elders with thorns and briars, and tore down Penuel's tower, killing its men, Judges 8:13-17. Defeat of Zebah and Zalmunna, Judges 8:18-21. Gideon confronted Zebah and Zalmunna, who had killed his brothers at Tabor. When they admitted it, Gideon ordered his young son Jether to execute them. But Jether hesitated. The kings taunted Gideon to do it himself, and he did, taking their crescent ornaments as spoils. Gideon's later life and legacy, Judges 8:22-35. After the victory, the Israelites asked Gideon to rule over them, saying, "Rule over us, you, your son, and your grandson, because you have saved us." Judges 8:22. Gideon refused, declaring, "The Lord will rule over you." Judges 8:23. However, he requested gold from the spoils, making an ephod, a priestly garment that he placed in Ophrah. Tragically, Israel later worshipped it, and it became a snare to Gideon and his family. Judges 8:27. Gideon lived a long life, fathering 70 sons from many wives, including Abimelech from a concubine. He died peacefully, but after his death, Israel returned to idolatry, Judges 8:33-35. Abimelech later caused further strife, Judges 9. Themes and significance. Gideon's story highlights God's tendency to choose the weak to shame the strong, 1 Corinthians 1:27. His patience with human doubt and the importance of obedience. Yet, it also warns against the dangers of pride and idolatry, as seen in the ephod incident. Gideon, though flawed, remains a pivotal figure in Israel's history, celebrated in Hebrews 11:32 as a hero of faith.